Our last speaker in this section is Dr. Daniel Ondo. He's from the Institute of Chemical Technology in Prague. His research is focused on the use of ITC, DSC, and surface tension methods to investigate viscoelastic systems formed by surfactants and cyclodextrins, as well as their interactions with proteins.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen here present in Santiago or online. My presentation is dedicated to more simple systems, not biological but more classical physical chemistry. So I will speak about using of isothermal titration calorimetry to study the methylation, solution and protonation of compounds. After a short historical introduction and applications presented in the last 15 years, I will, in the first part, I will speak about methylation and the application of exact thermodynamic model of Woolley and Burchfield. In the second application part, I will speak about presently published by our group how to study the thermodynamics of ionic liquids in aqueous solution. And the third application part is just shortly feasible if the isothermal titration calorimetry is feasible to study the protonation ionization reactions. A typical calorimetric experiment looks like that we are measuring the heat flow which is proportional to the change of temperature with the time. Integration through time, whether from beginning to some point, it's the total heat produced due to the chemical process. If you do the integration between two certain time points, we observe an incremental heat. I would say that the titration calorimetry started to be developed at the 60s at Brigham University, where Christensen and Oscarson and Izat started to develop a simple titration calorimeter where they placed the thermometer into a Dewar vessel, which was of 100 milliliter volume, and the injection was continuous, and they measured total heat. The second milestone was the development performed at Lund University in Sweden at 80s in the group of Vatso and Sokursk and other people. They started to use a twin type which reduced the noise due to the twin type cell construction, heat conduction using the Peltier principle of the sensors. They reduced the volume 4 milliliters and even to 1.5 milliliters, and they started to use incremental injection and measured and used the calorimeter for biological samples. A milestone, I would say the biggest, was at the beginning of the 90s, which was performed at the University of Massachusetts at Weissman Group with the cooperation with Microcal company, where they used also a twin type construction but power compensating calorimeter. The injection was performed stepwise, and also the measured effects are between two time intervals. And since the 80s, the method can be called as isothermal titration calorimetry because we are keeping always the temperature at, as constant. Shortly, here is one of the calorimeters which I'm used to work. It's thermal activity monitor developed in Sweden, but now sold by Thermal Analysis Instruments. It's quite a nowadays. It's not not used very often because it has a high time constant. But it's a modular calorimeter where the titration cell is placed into the heat conduction channel. It works from 5 to 90 degrees Celsius. We can vary the volume of the reaction volume, also the injection volume. The thermostatization is done by water thermostat. The second, which was mentioned quite a lot during the morning and now, it's one of the microcalorimeters. It's a VP-ITC, which is a power compensating. Here on the picture we have one-to-one scale. For those who are not familiar, it's a calorimeter power compensating with a reaction volume of 1.5 milliliters. Now Microcal is producing also 200 microliter reaction cell volume calorimeter. This calorimeter works in the same temperature range as TAM. The dimensions are smaller, so you can travel with it, but the problem is that it has very low modifications. One of it, so for your application, you have to choose the right calorimeter. For instance, this calorimeter is not able to work with nanoparticles or solid particles due to the paddle and cell construction. This slide is dedicated to the strength of the titration calorimetry, since in one experiment you can measure both the equilibria and the heat observed and connected with the process. It is very often misunderstood and omitted that you can fit the data globally. Here I show an example where I studied interaction of dotted cell surfactants with alpha-cyclodextrin, where it is known that the surfactants form a 1-to-1 and 2-to-1 complex with alpha-cyclodextrin. I performed titrations at 5 temperatures from 10 to 35 degrees, no, 45, and I treated the data simultaneously. Here we have M times M is a number of experimental temperatures, E is a number of experimental points at each temperature, so we have M times E experimental data points. And if we assume for each chemical reaction that the process is, the heat capacity is constant, we have 3 adjustable parameters for each chemical process. So totally we have 6, for this case, 6 parameters, which are the binding constant, enthalpy, and heat capacity at 25 degrees. This global fitting allows us to avoid inconsistency between the temperature dependence of binding constant and reaction enthalpy, as can be well seen on the plot on the left side. Here I shortly list some applications which were published in the last 15 years. It's on the new applications using the ITC, different apparatus, TAM, nano ITC or VP ITC. First is the dilution method. Second, different modifications of competitive methods for determination of high binding constants. Kinetic methods presented by Philip and some Japanese group. Then to measure the excess enthalpies in the mixture of ionic liquids, which are very viscous and you cannot use the VP ITC. Then continuous method presented by Natalia, and also multi-thermal titration calorimetry presented by Enrique several years ago. Here we can see just a list of them. So now we turn to the first application part, which is very common, quite often used, but I would say it's mostly semi-empirical data analysis. When you are studying surfactant methylation, mostly the experiment is performed that you have highly concentrated surfactant solution, you inject it into the pure solvent, and you observe a titration curve like this, where you have the dilution of the micelles, slight saturation around the critical methylation concentration, and then dilution of the aggregated micelles. The chemical reaction can look like this for neutral, for instance polyethylene glycols, or for ionic, where the surface active ion is A. So here we are observing the data for this reaction are observed for the reversed process. Performing the titration at different temperatures, we observe the heat capacity of methylation. In the literature, our most common use is to analyze the data by Boltzmann sigmoid, but the problem is that the slopes here before the critical methylation concentration and after have not thermodynamic meaning. Yes, you can analyze the CMC and the heat of methylation, but these are also not thermodynamically consistent in temperature dependence. This gives me a hint that maybe there should be some model, and I researched and found a very nice thermodynamic model Woolley of Birchfield, which was published almost 30 years ago, and it was derived to treat simultaneously all the thermodynamic data. For instance, for ionic surfactants, osmotic or activity coefficients, relative apparent enthalpies, heat capacity and volume data. The model is quite sophisticated. Here I use this equation to treat the heats of dilution of the aqueous surfactant, where the adjustable parameters is the equilibrium constant, which is hidden in the K parameters, the methylation enthalpy, the temperature dependence of the ion interaction parameter, and then methyl ion interaction parameter. The K parameters are quite sophisticated functions of molality, equilibrium constant, Debye-Hückel parameters, temperature, but we have at least thermodynamic meaning of the slopes before and after the CMC, which are the slopes and describe the temperature dependence of the mean activity coefficient. The high drawback of this method is, of this model, is that you need the knowledge of Debye-Hückel parameters for the solvent you are using is needed. These parameters are available for water, simple organic solvents, but not for all. The other very important drawback which I observed during the course of the study is that since you are using surfactant whose aggregates can be of order 50, 100 monomers, you treat with very high numbers in the equilibria. For instance, I observed that when you have surfactant which forms aggregates of 70 monomers, you need very high numbers, which this is the limit, mathematical limit for the MATLAB software. Here I show some simulations for typical surfactant, sodium dodecyl sulfate in water. We have two different titration curves here with the approximation of two different CMC values, and here we can see the influence of different slopes before and after the CMC. As we can see, the before methylation is more influenced by the value, as here, for instance, this is 5 value, and this is -10, so here the variation is not so big as before the CMC. This model was further applied during the study of methylation of alkyl imidazolium ionic liquids in water and in other ionic liquid, ethyl ammonium nitrate, for which the Debye-Hückel parameters were available. As we can see, the model describes the data well. We used the TAM ITC at several temperatures. The titration curves are well described, and even the high viscosity mixture of ethyl ammonium nitrate described quite well. We can see here, for this case, that the heat capacity is for the methylation is almost 0. Second application part of my presentation is recently developed method for the measurements of solubility products and heats of solution of hydrophobic ionic liquids directly from the titration experiment. In the literature, the data on the heats of solution or the excess enthalpy for the aqueous mixtures of ionic liquids are mostly for hydrophilic ones. Ionic liquids are quite hot topic compounds, mostly defined as salts with melting points below 100 degrees Celsius. The problem arises when we start to study thermodynamic properties for hydrophobic ionic liquids, since they have very low solubility. We got inspired by this chemical reaction, which is one of the key reaction in the synthesis of the ONS ionic liquids, where we have the source of hydrophobic cation, hydrophobic anion A, and when we mix the two aqueous solutions, we observe formation of precipitate. Through thermodynamic relations, we can relate the equilibrium constant and the enthalpy of the reaction to the solution thermodynamics, to the solution enthalpy and solubility product. If we place one ion into the cell, for instance R, and the counter ion, for instance A, into the syringe, and we titrate, we observe after several conditions and titrations formation of precipitate, where the heat produced is proportional to the amount of precipitate formed and heats of solution. We tested this method on the VP-ITC at 25 degrees. On these combinations of ions, which are quite representative, one imidazolium, guanidinium, alkyl ammonium cations, heavily fluorinated anions, tetrabutyl tetraphenyl borate, and typical again surface active dodecyl sulfate. Here is a test and one of the typical titration curves on the left side. We tested this reaction on the formation of butyl trimethyl imidazolium base trifluorosulfonyl imide ionic liquid, for which the data are quite extensive available in the literature. On the left side, we have the raw titration data. On the beginning, we have endothermic heats of mixing. As we approach the solution boundary, the change of the peak changes to the exothermic heats of formation for the precipitate. Here we can see the detailed how the peak changes from positive and changes also the order. Here we have faster formation of the second phase. After integration, we observed this kind of a curve with the plotted as the function of the total concentration, as the total product of the concentrations. We analyzed this for several experimental conditions. We tried different injection mode, injection speed, exchange the cation and anion in the cell or syringe. This is the average heat solubility product, which I will say it's in very good agreement with the selected literature values. And we also observed a very good agreement with the literature values on the value on the heats of solution. So this new method allows us to determine heats of solution and solubility product to be determined from one titration. But when we change from ionic liquids, which are a liquid at room temperature, to solids, several problems arrive, which I shortly wanted to discuss with Philip, but it was too complicated for me. As here we have we have one exemplary for formation of potassium tetraphenyl borate. So even we tried to optimize the experimental parameters, we always observed baseline skip, white peak. The injections, the signal didn't return to baseline. So we observed that the solution is super saturated. The precipitate formed on the steering pedal. So we couldn't analyze very well the solubility product, but we could analyze the from other mode of experiment the heats of solution, which are in quite good agreement with the literature. For silver chloride, these problems were not observed, since it has a very low solubility product, and the reaction was fast, and the signal returned back to baseline. The drawback was that since it's very low soluble, we couldn't analyze the solubility product, but still the heat is in very great agreement with the literature. From all the 18 different combinations of cation and anion, we observed different classes, reaction and species. For 6 combinations, we observed formation of room temperature ionic liquids, for which we analyzed the heats of solution and solubility product. For 7, we could analyze were solids, and for only 3 of them we could analyze the heats of solution, because the solubility product was very low. For rest, the sodium dodecyl sulfate was undergoes methylation in the aqueous salt solution. For the butyl ammonium salt, we couldn't observe any calorimetric response. For the imidazolium, the CMC was around 0.2 millimole. Generally, the heats of solution was exothermic, but for FP2 and anion it was endothermic, which is quite interesting. Here I summarized the applicability range, which is the sum of our experience and of the a priori analysis using the detection limits and measuring range for the VP-ITC. On the left side, you can divide the applicability range into 3 parts. 1, 2, 3. The left side is for very low soluble salts, where we could analyze and evaluate only the heats of solution. In the middle part, we could analyze for the salts, for the formed salts, both heats of solution and solubility product. On the right side, since it's a very high solubility product, we cannot analyze nor heats of solution nor solubility product, since the non-ideality corrections are high. Secondly, we need to use high concentrations of the solutions to observe the phase separation. Generally, we can summarize that this method is well suited for compounds which form ionic liquids or liquid salts at 25 degrees to avoid solid precipitate formation, since the suspension is since the emulsion is much easier to mix in the cell, and also it's best suited for fast equilibrating reaction to observe the signal to return back to baseline. Third part is dedicated just to feasibility if the titration calorimeter is able to study protonation reactions. The motivation for the study protonation of the amines or other compounds in the cell in the titration calorimeter is that amines are used in industry for the CO2 absorption. The whole process can be described by these 5 reactions, where this is the protonation of the amine, and the total the protonation, the heat of the protonation of the amine is the 40% of all of these reactions. So it has a it's the high energy content for the process development. Other motivation is that solubilizing the active pharmaceutical ingredients most of the ingredients have several ionization groups, whether amide groups or carboxyl groups. One, which is the more academic reason, is that this method was lastly developed in the 60s by Christensen, where I mentioned in the introduction that he used a high reaction volume. The detection limit was very low, and he used high concentrations, so he needed to use high non-ideality corrections. The chemical reaction of our interest is at the top, which is the protonation-deprotonation of the base, which can be combined from the proton transfer from acid to the base, acid deprotonation, and we still have to include the water dissociation. Maybe this reaction can be familiar to somebody, and I think we can treat it as a competitive model. So in the first approximation, so if we know the data for the acid deprotonation, this is well known, and we study this in the calorimetry, we can calculate the data for the base deprotonation. Here I show just theoretical titration curves calculated for VP-ITC, 1.5 milliliter reaction volume. This is stimulated titration curves, where the Kb for the base increases in this type. So at the beginning we have a typical sigmoid curve, which then changes to the saturation and then the saturation with the proton. This is calculated for titration of weaker base with a weak acid, which I assumed an acetic acid, for which the enthalpy of deprotonation is very low. On the right side we can see the species distribution for a typical example, titration of a tris buffer with acetic acid. Here we have the curves of titration for 300 microliter syringe. On the left side we have the concentration of the species. On the right side the change of the pH during the course of the titration. As you can see, here is the equivalence point, which is for tris is around pH 8. So we can see very well the equivalence point and the species distribution. This corresponds to the blue points here, the titration curve. This method is currently under development, so this is just an introduction and maybe a new application of the titration calorimetry. In conclusion, I show some applications which are more typically in physical chemistry than in biology, for the methylation of ionic surfactant, to study the thermodynamics of ionic liquids in aqueous solution, and I introduced a feasibility study for the deprotonation of base. Maybe one of the possible outlook is to implement the deprotonation reaction to affinity meter. At the end, I would acknowledge the financial support of the research during my stay in Germany, to Nikolai Ignatiev for providing us the sample of the salts which are not commercially available, and to the Ministry of Education of Czech Republic for the financial support of the research.
Okay, we have time for a couple of questions.
Just a comment, as we have spoken before. I think that obviously you should, in all cases, and you mentioned that in your introduction, choose the colorimeter that is appropriate for your application. In case of these systems which form two phases, like the ionic liquids, I think that the microcolor or the CSC is not, they are not the appropriate instruments, because since after saturation two phases, and this is a field system, what goes out will be mostly the phase that is less dense. So we cannot say that what is going out is the representing what is in the colorimeter. I think the TAM is much more appropriate for this type of studies. You can do that properly because you have a gas phase and you have a volume that you can control. And further to that, if you have solids, it's even worse, solid precipitation in the case of the field system. And maybe that is the reason why you have this drift in baseline, because after you form the precipitation, you have this and it will be difficult to clean and so forth. And just the second comment is that, in fact, because I also use it, the TAM, and they have commercial cells which volume is not 3 but 1, so they can be used with 0.9 milliliter. So in fact it's smaller volume than the VP. So
I will comment on this. This was one of the comments of during my thesis defense. Yes, you are right that the construction of the VP ITC cell, it's not well suited for this, but after the experiment termination, we had never observed that we had dense liquid at the top, at the bottom, and at the top. The amount of the ionic liquid formed during the titration or at the end, it's so low that it was very fine emulsion. And not that we observed when you study liquid-liquid equilibria that you have the dense phase at the bottom and the light phase at the top. You are right that for it will be better to use TAM. Also maybe because of it has a lower detection limit, so we could go to lower solubility products. And also maybe to higher solubility products, because we can go to higher detection measuring limits as the VP ITC.
Another question? Norma?
Nick?
You mentioned the equilibrium constants for micellization getting out of control if you write them as one individual equilibrium constant, but if you take a stepwise aggregation constant and then raise them to the power of the aggregation number, you avoid all the numerical problems.
Yes and no. Yes, it's possible, but then when you have, I think it's possible when you have small aggregates like 10, 20, then you have 20 consecutive equations. Equilibriums and solve the equations, but when you have 50, 70, you have to write the 50, 70 equations. So I avoided this, that I used rather smaller aggregation number to be in the numerical range of the MATLAB. Maybe I'm not familiar with the other mathematical softwares. Maybe Mathematica, Fortran are able to use higher numbers. But you're right that during doing the division by the number of aggregates, we have the equilibrium constant for the sequential reaction. You're right.
Okay, thank you very much for your talk, Daniel. There is the last one.
How do you manage buffers along a pH titration? The ionization may vary and add variability. I mean, when you change along a wide pH range. Sí, ¿no?
Do you want to read it here?
Which one?
I think it's the last. Okay, the question is, the audience asks, how do I treat the change of the pH during the titration of the buffer? The aim is the change of the pH during the titration. This is done mostly like a typical potentiometric titration, when you want to study at which pH does your ionization group ionize. So it's not to perform this titration with the electrode and with the potentiometer, but in the colorimeter. So you use the buffer into the cell and you titrate with the acid, so you observe the pH change, and at the pH where you have in the equilibrium the free acid and the free base, it's the pH where is the equilibrium. So it's analogous to potentiometric determination of the pKa values of the buffers of the drugs or the surfactants which have ionizable groups. So the aim of this method is not to keep the pH constant, but to change the pH during the titration.
Okay. Let's thank finally to our three speakers for this session. Any announcement for the launch?
So thank you very much for all the speakers and also the audience here in Santiago and also online. So we have a break of 2 hours, I think, and at 4 o'clock Spanish time we will be back. Thank you.